Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and another video in honor of National Family History Month. If you've missed my previous two videos, I will link to them below as well as my previous two blog posts and today's blog post as well, which is actually on the same topic as this video. So you can consume it either in this video form or in written form. Go crazy. Today I wanted to talk about recording your oral family history because I feel like it's an area of our family history research that people tend to look over because it is so much easier to just delve into the written archives and get lost in all of the document records. But oral history provides you with the opportunity to learn stories that you're never going to find in the document archive, in the newspaper records, and stories you're going to miss out on if you don't sit down with family members and record the stories and memories that they have to tell. I also feel like a lot of people tend to skip over doing oral history because they are a little bit unsure about how to go about it, or they feel like they don't have the skills or the technology in order to actually do it. But I can tell you this right now, you do not need to be overly tech or computer savvy. You don't have to have fancy smancy equipment, and you don't have to spend a fortune trying to get the technology in order to do this. So keep watching if you're interested in learning more. So firstly, why record oral family history to begin with? Well, as I said, as informative as the document record is, there are stories that just are never going to make the document record. Whether you are sitting down with your parents, grandparents, or even great-grandparents and talking about their childhood, their upbringing, their life, their parents, what their memories are, or sitting down with other family members and talking about memories that you have of those no longer with you, it's a valuable aspect of your family history research and therefore something that you shouldn't just skip over. Plus, for those of us lucky to still have parents, grandparents, and even great-grandparents, there's the sentimental reasoning of being able to hear them tell their stories and then have that audio to listen back to in years to come when they're no longer with us. So the technical stuff. This is probably where some people are going to be like, oh, but I don't have a program to do this. I don't have the technology and equipment to do this. And I'm here to tell you, you probably do. Pretty much all phones, tablets, and laptops these days come with pre-installed audio software, a built-in microphone, and the ability to not only record audio but also save it and enable you to listen back to it later on. So you don't have to have fancy smancy equipment. You could literally just have your phone, your tablet, your laptop, and record that way. As I said, there's pre-installed programs on these devices, but there are a ton of free programs out there that you can play around with if you want something that's maybe a little bit easier to use, offers some different features. And even all of the paid programs, most of them come with free trials, so you can still play around with them without forking over any money unless you find something that you absolutely love and know you will use and get a great lot of use out of. By all means, you can deck your kit out with expensive stuff. Obviously, an external microphone is probably something that a lot of people would be interested in investing in, but we aren't trying to win a Grammy for our oral history, so it doesn't have to be studio quality recording. As long as the audio is good enough for you to listen back to and transcribe easily, as well as just share with other people for them to listen to, you're fine. In my video at the start of the month, I talked about apps that I use for family history, two of which I use for recording oral history. The first one is the Voice Memories app, which is built into the iPhone. The other one is the Family Search Memories app. I'll link to that video below so you can learn more about it. There's heaps of other ones out there as well if you check the App Store. In terms of computer software, for all of my video and audio recording and editing, I use Movave Video Suite, which comes with an audio recording program on its own. This is a paid program, but as I said, most paid programs do have free trials, so check that out. If you are looking for a really good, easy to use free software for your computer, then check out Audacity. But there's a ton out there. If you are looking to experiment, then do a bit of a Google search and see what is available. So compiling your questions. Now, the questions you ask are obviously entirely up to you. What do you already know about the person you're interviewing? What do you know about the family members in that branch of the family, and what do you want to find out? What stories and information do you want to hear about? It's really good to start with some basic questions and then get into some more specifics about different topics that you would like that person to tell you about, but also let the stories that that person tells you guide you in what to ask. Keep things relaxed and let the conversation follow a natural flow. I do, of course, have some question examples. So ask things like, what do you remember about your parent or grandparents? What did your parents do for a living? What was your childhood like? What was your relationship like with your siblings or cousins? Where did you grow up? Describe your houses or describe your house or houses. What was it like growing up in whatever location they grew up in or during whatever event? So, you know, what was it like growing up during the war or the Great Depression or things like that? What was school like? Did you go on any memorable holidays? How did you meet your spouse? Describe the birth of your children. What was your first job? And tell me about your career. You can easily Google like oral family history questions and you will get a ton to give you inspiration. But do remember the best questions are probably going to be the ones that come to you in the moment as you are listening to that person tell their story. I will say this, try not to restrict yourself with an interview format that you want to repeat for everyone you talk to. It's great in theory because it gives everything the same format, the same aesthetic, but you run the risk of not hearing stories that your questions don't prompt. By all means, go in armed with a list of questions and topics you want to cover, but be open to thinking up questions on the spot. As much as your questions are going to guide how the interview goes, make sure that your interviewee is also guiding you with the stories they tell and the questions that you therefore ask. So you've got your equipment ready to go and a list of questions you want to cover. Now it's time to record. Of course, how you actually go about doing an interview will really depend on who you're talking to and just what will suit you best and suit them best. There are a bunch of different methods that you can do. There is no right or wrong way to do this, so don't be put off if someone is doing it differently to you. Whatever works best for you and the people involved. Obviously, the first thing that comes to mind when you think of sitting down and recording oral history is a one-on-one interview with someone. It's a dedicated interview session where you're asking questions and getting straight to the point. That totally can work. There is nothing wrong with doing that at all. In one sense though, it can feel very formal and very much like an interview, and that might not be the best situation for some people. They might not feel as comfortable or as relaxed. But it can help you get straight to the point and get to the questions you want asked. Obviously, it doesn't have to be just one-on-one. You can also involve just a couple or a family group. Again, it depends on what works best for you and the people involved. Another method is a little bit more casual, a little bit more relaxed, and in a group setting. So whether this be an impromptu, so this could be something as simple as hey everyone, let's get the family together this weekend and just sit down and talk about the family and we can record it. Or it can be something even more impromptu where you are already hanging out with your family and the conversation shifts to talking about memories and the family tree and family history and things like that. And you can just sort of record on the spot then. This is a great way to get multiple people sharing stories and experiences and memories and having other people ask questions, so it's not just you directing the questions all the time. You have other people on the spot coming up with questions. Obviously with this group recording, particularly if you are doing an impromptu one where the conversation just shifts and you press record, you kind of have to be in a position within your family for them to be okay with you pressing record without necessarily announcing to everyone, hey, I'm recording this. For me, I'm all about the group method. I am super fortunate to have family reunions with most branches of my family. Fortunately, the conversation just naturally shifts into talking about family history and sharing memories. I don't even have to prompt that, it just happens. It's amazing. I love my family for that. Because I record on my phone, in those situations I will just get my phone, hit record and sit it down for the entirety of the conversation. I have recordings that last anywhere between 5 and 40 minutes and some that are even longer than that. I'm also super lucky that I don't have to continually announce to everyone, hey, I'm recording. My family's totally fine with that. And half the time during a conversation, someone will inevitably bring up being hey, we should totally be writing all this down. And I can be I've been recording for half an hour, keep talking. Obviously, one of the downsides of a group recording is just listening back to it and having heaps of voices and trying to keep on top of who is who, but if you know your family pretty well, you should be able to figure this out and it shouldn't be too hectic. Experiment with what works best for you and your family. Some people will prefer the strict formality of a dedicated interview where it is one-on-one and you are asking all the questions, while others will prefer the more relaxed nature of a group setting without feeling like they're being put on the spot. So, we've got the recording, now what? This is where you have to transcribe it. And honestly, this is the most difficult part of this whole thing. You may think the recording and the getting set up and the technology side of things is the most difficult. Believe me when I say it is the transcribing, because it is the most time consuming. But as time consuming as it is, it's also one of the most rewarding parts of this whole thing, because once you have a transcript, you finally have that story written down and ready to share with the rest of your family and future generations. Again, how you choose to actually format your transcript is really up to you. What is going to be the easiest for you to transcribe to and to access later and share with everyone else? Does your physical and or digital collection already have a format and aesthetic you want to keep to? Also, how are you actually choosing to display your history to begin with? Just like everything else for this whole endeavor, it's something you're going to have to play around with what works best for you. Even just because I'm about to show you how I do it doesn't mean that that's going to be a method or a format that you're going to gel with. You might have to play around with it a little bit. So this is what my template looks like. Obviously this is a very short little transcript, a little story. but this is what it looks like. So I have a spot to put a title, so to describe it with whatever the conversation or that part of the conversation is about. In this case, it is about my great-grandfather who had a fear of frill-necked lizards. It's quite a fun story. A spot here to put the date of when the recording took place, and also a location for when the recording took place, and then the participants that were involved in this conversation. And for example here, this is another conversation, different branch of the tree. This is a conversation about a person with 3 people involved in this conversation. Interestingly, this was my great aunt telling a story about her cousin. My dad, who is on the other side of the family, also could weigh in on this conversation because my families lived in a similar region to one another, and my dad knew of this person as well. So as you can see, that's how I formatted like the different people speaking, you know, just going back and forth between them. This template is actually available in a document bundle I have available over on my website. If you're interested in checking that out, there is a dozen, I think, documents that are super helpful for both researching and displaying. So if you're interested, check that out. So from those transcriptions, you can see that I only transcribe a small segment of a conversation rather than the whole recording. I prefer to do that because it makes it easier for me to access different stories and then also display them later. You can totally choose to transcribe the whole like hour-long interview, or you can just snip it down to when you're talking about a certain topic, a certain person, a certain memory kind of thing. Be prepared to listen to your audio recordings over and over and over and over and over again. Even if you are a relatively quick touch typer like myself, you are probably still going to be listening to 10 to 30 seconds of audio at a time, writing, going back, listening to it again, checking, fixing up, writing, going back, and just repeating that process. It's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. This is obviously where it becomes the most time consuming, but do stick with it because as I said, it is worth it. Now, you may be tempted to just summarize your interviews and your recordings and your stories, which totally you can do that, but I find in summarizing you tend to lose a bit of context surrounding the story. You might leave out bits of a story that you don't really think are important to the overall story but may help someone in the future understand the story better. Plus, by transcribing it word for word, you are writing everything down in the person's voice, how it was told. Even if it goes off on little tangents, you are still writing that down, and people can look back at it and can essentially hear that person telling the story, and it comes with every single detail, every single tangent. If you do want to summarize, I recommend summarizing on top of transcribing, so you can have a full transcript, but you can then have a short summary of what that transcript is about. What happens if you can't sit down and interview someone because they just don't want to? Chances are there is going to be at least one person in your family who is just not here for being recorded. They don't want to talk about the past. They don't want it written down. They just don't want a bar of being involved in this little project of yours. And that's fine. Let them be. But I would say don't just give up outright. See if there is a topic that they do want to discuss. Maybe they just don't want to talk about their childhood, but they are more than happy to talk about their career and children. If you can set those parameters, that person might be more willing to open up about the areas of their life that they do want to talk about. If they know that you're not going to turn around and ask them about some area of their life that they don't want to talk about. Of course, there are still going to be people who just do not want to talk about their past. That is fine. Do not push it. There is clearly a reason they don't want to open up. It is obviously a shame from like a family historian perspective because they are holding on to stories that could be super interesting, but like if they don't want to talk, they don't want to talk. Don't push it, and also don't make them feel bad for not wanting to be involved. It's their decision. There's clearly something they're holding on to that they don't want to talk about or they don't want to relive. Just suck it up kind of thing. And boom, just like that, you've started recording a whole new area of family history for your family that you're going to be able to pass on to future generations. These are family stories that are going to outlive the people that you're talking about or the people that you're interviewing. They're going to outlive you, particularly if you find some juicy, funny, and interesting ones in there. There are so many amazing stories that I learned through recording my oral family history, and some that I will seriously cherish for years to come and can't wait to pass on to my kids and grandkids. So definitely do get in and record before it's too late for some family members. Obviously, if you have parents, grandparents, great-grandparents who are getting on in age and maybe also just getting on in mental and physical health, then do it sooner then please do this sooner rather than later. My grandmother, she has Alzheimer's. She can't talk. She obviously doesn't really have any memory of anything. You know, I'm sad that I won't be able to ask her questions and get to learn a little bit more about her upbringing and everything like that. So definitely do talk to people as soon as possible, so that way you have their stories written down before it is too late. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and it gave you a little bit of a boost and a kick to get into recording your oral family history. If you are already recording some of your oral family history and you have some methods and tips and ideas and questions or whatever, then leave them in the comments below to share with other people to help everyone else out. This should be like a real little community sharing all of our tips and ideas and things like that. If you guys did enjoy this video, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next week with my final video for National Family History Month. Bye!